Cultivating Compassion, and it is centered on Mark chapter 1, verse 41, which reads, "Moved with pity, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched the leper and said to him, 'I do choose, be made clean.'" I ask that we meditate today on the word compassion. What is compassion? Yesterday, my daughter Sarah looked out the window there at our house there in Forney, and she called out to me and she said, "Dad, the Care Flight ambulance is out there again at the house across the street." Sarah had been at my house enough to know that Care Flight makes all too frequent stops at the neighbor's house across the street. The elderly gentleman there has some recurring health problems and has had to call 911 several times over the past year. And I recognize that look on my daughter's face. It's that look you get when you see that something is wrong with someone else and you feel it in your gut. It's how our body reacts to the suffering of others. Is that compassion? I'm not sure. What do you think? What is compassion? If I help an old lady across the street, that is a kindness. If I drive to the store and see that someone has been stopped by the police, I feel sorry for, or I feel empathy for that person getting a ticket. If I see a bug on the pavement as I walk down the street and I avoid stepping on the bug, that is grace. If I see dog poop on the sidewalk and avoid stepping on it, that is good luck. If the neighborhood dog who always barks at me and is always getting into my trash is suddenly in front of my car as I'm driving down the street, but I slow down so as not to run over that mangy dog, that is mercy. If my child borrows my car and returns it with a full tank of gas, that is consideration. So what is compassion? I looked up the meaning of compassion on the internet, and the results told me that compassion literally means to suffer together. Com means with, and passion means to suffer. So to suffer with. The internet went on to inform me that compassion is a feeling that arises when you are confronted with another's suffering and feel motivated to relieve that suffering. So with compassion, there's a sense that there's not only a feeling for someone else, but there's also an action, doing something about it. So moved with pity, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched the leopard and said, "I do choose, be made clean." Lepers in Jesus' day were considered untouchables. According to Leviticus chapter 13, the law of Moses says this: the person who has the leprous disease shall wear torn clothes and let the hair of his head be disheveled, and he shall cover his upper lip and shout out, "Unclean, unclean." And he shall remain unclean and shall live alone, and his dwelling shall be outside the camp. These instructions to the people of Israel early on in their life together made lepers the ultimate outsiders. They are symbols of those no one can help and of those without hope. There are no 911 calls for lepers in Jesus' day. They had the deep pain of knowing that no one cares. But then there is this wonderful exchange between Jesus and the leper in Mark chapter 1. Leper, if you choose, you can make me clean. And Jesus's response was visceral. The English translation reads, moved with pity or moved with compassion in some translations, but that doesn't quite convey the full meaning of what went on within Jesus. In the original Greek, it reads something like this: feeling anger about the condition of the leper, Jesus reached out and touched him. So what we learn from Jesus is that part of compassion is crying out, why and how long and how could this be? And being so motivated by this anger, this gut feeling, this sorry state of affairs that we actually do something about it. So Jesus reaches out and touches the leper and violates the law of Moses. Jesus, by doing so, welcomes the leper back into the community, back into the circle of humanity. And that is this compassion of Jesus that heals the man and gives the man dignity and gives him a sense of belonging. Pastor Eric Peterson, the son of Eugene Peterson, who translated the Bible into what we know as the Message, Pastor Eric reflects this way: Jesus didn't come to deliver us from our humanity and its accompanying heartaches. Jesus came to join us in it all, the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly. So the leper touch that Jesus did in Mark 1 is huge. For what is happening here is breathtakingly beautiful if we fully comprehend it. God reaching out to us saying, I am not better than you. I am not less than you. I am with you. And we are the same. We are connected. We are one. So what can we learn from Jesus about the character of God and about our own response as humans? What we can learn is that in order for humans to cultivate compassion within ourselves, that first we have to see that we are all the same. One love, one life, one humanity, one need for connection. We are one and we get to carry each other through this life. I often say that the reason why we are here to answer that existential question that we often ask is, why do we exist? We exist to love and care for one another as equals. So a legitimate litmus test for true religion, true spirituality, is anything that leads you to recognize our inherent sameness, the universal connection of all humanity and indeed of all creation. We know now more than ever with the weather like it is that we are all connected even to the elements of the weather. And so unitive consciousness, not separatism and not division and not better than or less than, but unitive consciousness is the heart of all true spirituality. A couple of examples. When the Pope gets off the airplane in any country, he gets down on his knees and kisses the earth. He does this in every land, for all the earth is equally sacred. There is a sameness to the different terrains of every country. We may think that the earth of our country is special, that we are exceptional, better than that of other countries. But the Pope kissing the earth of every country awakens us to a deeper, more true perception of the reality of all things. Another example, when the Dalai Lama arrives in a country, he announces to all who are there, everyone wants happiness and doesn't want suffering. This is true of all. We are all bound together by common desire for happiness and the desire to avoid suffering. Another example, taken from our own scriptures, an example of Jesus. In John chapter 17, Jesus prays that we all might be one, just as he said, my Father and I are one, that we all should be one together. So, if you were to kiss with mindfulness the floor of every house you entered, and say to every person you meet, everyone wants happiness and doesn't want suffering, you will be cultivating compassion within yourself. You will be moving away from all that we have inherited from the world, which is separateness and competitive thinking. And you will be on a path of realizing that your neighbor is yourself. So, how are we doing? Am I compassionate to my neighbor across the street? The one whom I have not even met? Are we compassionate to the lepers of our day? Motivated to actually do something for them, to alleviate their suffering, to suffer with? And a question for you to meditate on for the rest of the day. What is it that moves you with pity? Are we compassionate to the homeless, or only compassionate to them when it's cold outside? Are we compassionate to the working poor, working 2 jobs, often without any benefits, and still scraping by to make ends meet? And if so, what government policies do we support to make their lives better? Or do we think that we are better than they and have made better choices than they have, falsely thinking that their suffering does not affect us? Another question for us to meditate on as we consider our own compassion. How is the church in America doing in our compassion for the suffering of our Black brothers and sisters? And if so, what are we as the church in America doing to actively be anti-racist? After 400 years of pain, when will we figure out that we, the white people, not they, are the ones who need to change, to choose love and compassion and not power over? Why do we let our politicians and media separate us so easily on issues like the environment, or just following and listening to science and fact-based research, or immigration, or access to basic health care, which seems like we would all compassionately want for each other? Shouldn't the church be taking the lead on these issues, bypassing the culture wars and seeking unity? Shouldn't Christians be bothered by the status quo and anything that divides us one from another? If the church isn't known for cultivating compassion, what would we be known for? I don't know how we are doing in these areas. Sometimes I am greatly encouraged, especially as I consider the work that our own church does in our own community. Sometimes I am full of despair when I realize that the issues are so big and so complex and so divisive. So as with most things, it's probably a mixed bag, one step up, two steps back. But I do know this. I know the word compassion is splattered all throughout the Bible. And as we read the Bible enough, we know that the word compassion is a constant reminder that the character of God is comprised of and not compromised by being compassionate. And I know this. I know that if Jesus had compassion on everyone, on those who everyone else ignored, then we, as those who would follow Jesus, should seek first the outcasts and embrace them and learn from them and let them change us. And I know this. I know that the God of the Old Testament and the New Testament is a God who does not leave us to our own devices, but always comes to be with us, to come alongside us. And I'm grateful for that constant presence all around us all the time. And I do know this. I do know that as we lament our human condition of being divided, and as we lament our current condition of suffering so much from the worldwide pandemic, and as we look around and see the loss of unity and sameness and connection, I know that we can turn to Jesus and say to our Savior, if you choose, you can make us whole. You can restore our communion. You can make us connected yet again at atonement, at one with each other. And time again, I know this, that Christ reaches out to us and touches us and says, I do choose, be made whole. And for that, this day and every day, let us say, thanks be to God.